I love technology. It is so, there we are. Good morning to our Facebook family and friends. Thank you for being with us this morning at the Monterey Center for Spiritual Living. We welcome you to our Sunday service. Our monthly theme today, or our theme for the month of October, Cosmic Connections. Our series concludes this week as we explore the theme of building bridges that last. Last week, we identified the spiritual tools of forgiveness and love. Forgiveness meaning to give as before, to set aside or to return to the love that is its true original source, including self-forgiveness. And we also learned that the spiritual tool of love, especially self-love, are the required tools for building bridges over troubled waters in every area of our life. And so we created those bridges that have taken us over the troubled waters. And now we look at building bridges that last. And as a segue into the talk this morning, I want to share with you a little story about an experience in my life. And I'm going to use the phrase, God is like. And this was a term that one of my spiritual teachers used as a way of describing the way God shows up in various experiences in our life. And so my experience is going to be, God is like hot sauce. A little dash enhances your life. So let's see where this goes. In the share, I'm going to mention some key phrases about this experience in my life. And as you pick them up, I would be interested to see, for those of you who are on Zoom, drop a little note in the chat. And for those of you who are on Facebook Live, put a note in the comments and I'll take a look at those afterwards and see where we are in sync with each other. So I'm going along merrily with my life, packing, embracing cherished memories, choosing what to release now, along with some of my not yet items, some things I'm just not ready to let go of. We've had that experience, right? Visualizing their position in my new apartment and just embracing other life activities. And then I received a phone call informing me that I may have been exposed to someone who tested positive for the coronavirus, and that I may have to self-quarantine for 14 days. So now, as a backdrop to this, at the onset of the virus and the shelter in place, or as some of us in spiritual community call it, the shelter in grace, I was perfectly fine with abiding by those guidelines. Being somewhat of an introvert, I enjoy being with myself. I really like me. And so I figured, okay, this is no big deal. And I remember early on doing some sharing on social media and in conversations, some of the benefits that we were enjoying out of being sheltered in place. One of those was not having to spend money to buy lunch every day, fixing lunch at home. The other was for those who had to vie for parking spots on the street. They didn't have to move their car, except for street cleaning notices. So that was a plus. An extended tank of gas in your car. I know for the first 2 months of the pandemic, I went 2 months on one tank of gas. And then I took pride in going a month following. And that changed a little bit recently, but everything was going along fine. And then here's where the God is like hot sauce mental journey kicked in. When I received the call about possibly having to quarantine, my surface mind went into overdrive, thinking about all of the limitations of being on lockdown, possibly for 14 days. Now, remember, I was fine with the program when it started because it wasn't mandatory for me to comply. But now, since it's mandatory, it's like my mind is just buzzing all over the place with, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? I spoke with my doctor and described the situation to her. And she said, You probably have not been exposed. I don't think there's anything for you to worry about. But just in case, I'm going to send you the self-quarantine guidelines. Well, I got the self-quarantine guidelines and my mind just kicked into a higher overdrive and started trying to develop escape plans. And the funniest escape plan was I can go out under the cover of darkness and take my trash to the dumpster. That was my highlight escape plan to get out of my apartment. And I could go on and on with things that were occurring. Considering this is only day one that the mind is doing this, can you imagine what I would have gone through had I had to go to 14 days? Well, a few days later, all of us received the good news call that the individual's retest came back negative, and we could all breathe a sigh of relief, and we all rejoiced. And it was like immediately the need to escape just vanished. That's like, oh, okay, I don't have to try and conjure up an escape mode. So that was my hot sauce experience, if you will. And I'm going to continue with this idea of God is like, and I invite you to just be mindful of those ways in your own life where you may have a God is like experience. Building and creating bridges that last. Think of the world's oldest bridges and ask yourself, what makes them last through the test of time? Well, I consulted Google for the world's oldest bridge, and this is what I discovered. The oldest datable bridge in the world still in use is the Substone Arch Bridge of the River Melez in Izmir, formerly Samira, Turkey. And this bridge dates back to circa 850 BC. Also, remnants of the Mycenaean bridges dated circa 1650 BC exist in the neighborhood of Mycenae, Greece, over the river Havos. So the basic building requirements are a combination of a good foundation, the right materials, and an engineer who is inspired to build something that will last for centuries, an inspired engineer. In relationships, we can say that God is like a lasting foundation of heartfelt and healthy relationships. Building relationship bridges that last is the process of creating sustainable, collaborative community partnerships. And again, from our CSL Global Vision, building bridges for a world that works for everyone. And the thought for today from A Course in Miracles is peace is the bridge that everyone will cross to leave this world behind. And so we want to build those bridges that include peace and compassion and joy and love and honor and respect. For those of you who come out of a traditional background, I want to take us to Sunday school for a few moments. And I want to share a story out of the Bible. And this is the story of Abraham and Lot. And it's an illustration of collaborative community partnerships. And the God is like idea that came to me for this story is that God is like provision. We read in Genesis chapter 13, verses 8, 9, and 11 from the New International Version. Abram said to Lot, "Let us not have any quarreling between you and me, and between your herdsmen and mine, for we are close relatives." An acknowledgement of family right off the bat. Abram continues the conversation in verse 9 by saying, "Is not the whole land before you? Let's part company. If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. And if you go to the right, I'll go to the left." And so in verse 11, we learn that Lot chooses the whole plain of the Jordan for himself and set out toward the east. And I believe the east would be to my right. So Lot went to the right, Abram remained on the left. You may be more familiar with the names Abraham and Sarah. God changed Abram's name, meaning high father, to Abraham, meaning father of a multitude. And God changed his wife's name from Sarai, meaning my princess, to Sarah, meaning mother of the nations. And this is just a little historical background. And so as we look more into the background of the story and see how it is that God makes provisions, God had blessed Abram and Lot abundantly, including the size of their herds and livestock. The growth had gotten to the point where their herdsmen were quarreling over the resources that were available in the fertile land. And remember, fertile land can only support so many livestock and so many people. You know, conditions of overcrowding, and we see those in some of our communities today, where situations of overcrowding cannot adequately support the community. So Abram and Lot combined their tribes. Their combined tribes were so large that the only option was to split up in order to prevent stagnation. Another invitation to live in harmony and unity by building bridges at last also is from the scriptures in Psalms 133 and 1. This also from the New International Version. And it reads, "How good and pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity." And this is what our center, the Monterey Center for Spiritual Living, stands for, is creating that place where people come together and live and fellowship and work together in unity. This is the goal of our Centers for Spiritual Living, and it is the goal of a lot of other spiritual communities as well as our social communities, where we are creating this place where people come together and live in harmony and in unity. And I share these Bible experiences with you because they represent the lineage of our Judeo-Christian heritage, which Ernest Holmes, our founder, is a part of. His foundation is in this area. And in Ernest Holmes' writings, in The Science of Mind, there are a lot of biblical references. And one of his statements that supports this belief is from our Declaration of Principles. I was going to say our Declaration of Independence. Yes, we are independent. From our Declaration of Principles, we believe in the unity of all life, and that the highest God and the innermost God is one God. We believe that God is personal to all who feel this indwelling presence. And so these stories illustrate the connection with our Centers for Spiritual Living global vision, which states, we envision a world in which resources are valued, cared for, and grown, and where there is generous and continuous sharing of these resources. And I just want to do a little shout out to the Monterey Center for Spiritual Living in the sharing of its resources. On a monthly basis, we tithe a percentage of our income to our home office that supports us with a lot of materials and support for our classes and other venues, our training. And we also tithe to a local nonprofit partner in the community. It is our way of giving back to the community. And we will be identifying those partners for you on an ongoing basis that we are contributing our resources to. So thank you for your generosity that allows us to be contributing partners into our local community. And so in creating a world that works for you and me, I say that God is like a mirror. We look around and we ask, do I see a world that works for everyone, including myself? Do I see a world that is free from discord? Do I see a world where all needs are met? A world where people are living together in peace? Creating a world that works for everyone begins with creating a world that works for you and me. We learned last week that forgiveness and faith and love is an inside job. Creating a world that works for everyone, building those bridges of connections is also an inside job. And it requires a partnership of us together and a commitment to creating those bridges. When we set an intention for living with self-realization and fulfillment of the fondness of our ideas, it inspires us to seek reconciliation with those situations that have hurt us in the past. And by asking, is there more healing inner work that I am to accept in this moment? It's like in our visioning practice, we ask, what is God's highest vision for whatever it is that we're visioning for? Right now, members of our community are visioning for the highest and best for the Monterey Center for Spiritual Living. And so we ask, what is God's highest vision? And we allow that to reveal itself. And we ask, what must I embrace? What must I embody to be and to live this vision? How does this vision express through me? How can I be a better participant in the community? And then we ask, what must I release? What do I need to let go of? What do I need to forgive? What do I need to remember the good things for that will allow me to embrace this vision and to be this vision in my life? And then the final question we ask is there anything else? Is anything else calling forth the emergence from spirit right here and right now? And so it is in setting those intentions, it is creating that vision that allows us to create a world that works for everyone. And I saw this expression from Mark Nepo that I really like. And Mark Nepo says, you don't need for something to go wrong in order to change. You don't need for something to go wrong in order to change. And we know that the good that we're seeking is also seeking us. Being an active and participating member of a spiritual community is one way to begin to lay the foundation for a world that works for everyone. And again, I just continue to express my gratitude for the Monterey Center for Spiritual Living and how you have embraced me just this short time that I have been your spiritual partner. And I think there's a unity here that defies words. It's a visceral feeling of unity and connection in creating this foundation for everyone. Recognizing that each one of us is a unique expression of this foundation. That each one of us reflects that good back to the other. What do you see when you look at this reflection? What do you see when you look at the reflection of each one of us, looking back at each other? God is like our glorious imperfections that make us utterly divine. You probably haven't heard that before. Our glorious imperfections are what make us utterly divine. It is the flaws, the rough edges, the broken rules, the counterintuitive choices that make us unique, effective, and memorable. These so-called imperfections are what attracts others to our creativity and what makes our creativity stand out. Remember, attention is drawn to things that stand out, not things that fit in. And we're known especially in the religious science and the New Thought community to definitely not fit in with the mainstream. So we're in good company today. Connecting with like-minded people who are also doing important inner healing work provides support along the way, reminding us again that the highest good, the innermost God, is shared by and expressed through each person that shares this awareness. When we hold up such a detailed mirror of our lives, we can see the things that make us totally unique. Giving ourselves permission to appreciate all the things our communities have given us shows us to feel more secure about ourselves and allows us to be more willing and more able to share our gifts to the fullest. Ernest Holmes writes this: no matter, no greater good can come to you than to know that the power already within you is the power to live, the power to create, not only to create for yourself, but to create for others. You are to realize that the power within you is your divine authority. It is a dispenser of the divine gifts. It is the giver of life, of joy. It proclaims the kingdom of heaven, the harmony of the soul, and the unity of all being. And this is from a Holmes Reader on Change, page 32. And we all know that many hands make light work. And so we seek to recognize the reflection of God. And so I say, God is like the highest and best expression of our good. That good that we express not only in the presence of our inner sanctuary, our inner awareness, but that good that we express in the presence of others. When we see this, we see the potential for creating a world that is free from all discord for every being. In this awareness, there is no separation from God. There is nothing to separate us from our good. There is nothing to separate us from the other. And remember, last week we identified that there is no other. We are each reflections of one another, each unique reflections of one another. And so as we strive to honor the unique characteristics of all whom we come into contact with, we realize that each encounter is a holy encounter, and it is an encounter indeed by a divine appointment. And so our call to action this morning, it's a very easy one. Identify your God is like story. Identify your God is like story. And as we wrap up our Cosmic Connection series, we remember God is like the divine appointment. We're here together in right and perfect timing. We recognize the unity that is expressed so beautifully in each unique and individual that makes up our wholeness. It is from this place of honoring one another and delighting in our variances that we can come together to create a world that supports the highest good of all beings. And so let us stand together on this foundation of mutual and unconditional positive regard for ourselves and for each other. Let us stand together and from this place begin to recognize the splendor of life that fulfills the greatest needs and greatest desires for everyone. Let us pray together. There is but one presence in the universe. Since it is in and through everything, it must be in and through each one of us. This presence manifests itself in and through all forms, all people, all conditions. This presence is life itself. Its nature is love and givingness. And it is in this presence that I speak this word, giving great gratitude and thanks for our time together this morning, giving thanks for the participants that have joined us, giving thanks for seeing the numbers on the screen increase, giving thanks for all that there is in this marvelous life. And I speak my word now into this so-called weather phenomena. And as Jesus, the master teacher, spoke his word and commanded the winds and the waves to be still when the disciples were out at sea and the boat was rocking and there was a great fear among the disciples, Jesus merely said, peace be still. And so I speak my word, and I invite each one who is participating in this call this morning, in this service this morning, to speak your word that says, peace be still. Peace be still in every single area of my life. Peace be still in the area of those who are affected by natural phenomena. Peace be still in the leadership of our local communities, the leadership of our state, the leadership of our nation, the leadership of the world at large. Peace be still. Peace be still in the lives of those who have not known peace from the interior, have not known peace from the exterior. But we call forth, we speak our word into the law, calling forth that inner peace that allows the courage and the intention to keep on pressing on. I speak my word for those prayers that remain in our hearts, knowing that the answer is yes and amen. Yes to divine right and perfect livelihood. Yes to divine right employment. Yes to divine right housing. Yes to divine right relationships. Yes to divine right resolution to anything that is unlike the very essence and the very presence of God, expressing through us and as us, and expressing through each and every individual we encounter. Blessing places where people are gathering, experiencing the truth of their being, knowing that there is only one life, and that life is God's life, and that life is perfect. I now release this prayer, I release this service into the alchemy and the activity of the law, which always says yes, and I just allow it to be so. And if any of this resonates with any of you, please affirm it with me as we say together, and so it is. And now it is time for our gracious giving, our opportunity to participate in the law of circulation. And we have an prosperity statement that is coming up on our screen. Our statement of abundance. I recognize the presence of God within as the source of my abundance. Out of my abundance, consciousness flows, everything I could desire in life. With gratitude and thanksgiving, I now participate in the flow of uninterrupted abundance. I release this visible substance, an outer symbol of my inner supply, into the physical world. This prosperous experience is evidence of my abundance consciousness. And we remind you of the ways you can participate in supporting our center by mailing in a check. The address is on your screen. Going to our website, the link is on your screen. All of our electronic donations are safe and secure through our Breeze network. And we also offer the feature to text to give, and that number is 831-246-9694. And as I say farewell to our Facebook family, I invite you to remain online. Let's see, I'm going to the chat. It says, I heard Reverend Robert say, we create for others. My grand